What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. In this episode we're going to be talking about how to create forms in your HTML documents. This video is going to be about how to actually create the form, and in a separate series when I go into dynamic programming languages I'll show you how to process the form. But before you get to that stage you have to learn about the HTML tags you'll be using for contact forms. Alright, so as always, code snippets can be found on my website. You can navigate to the part of the site that has the code snippets you want. You could just click on the links, and for the code snippets you could always just copy them to the clipboard and use them in your text editor. I'll be creating more tutorials on my website, PixemWeb.com, so definitely bookmark the site. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification icon so whenever I create new videos, you'll be notified. Alright, so let's go to our text editor. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to X out of these for now because these are from previous tutorials. We're currently in our index.html file. I want to go to the root of our project. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it contact.html. Now we have a blank document here. I'm just going to go over here, grab everything in the head section, copy that, paste it here. I'll create a body tag, and I'll close off the HTML tag down there. Alright, so we're going to be working in this section right here. So first thing I'll do is I'll just create an H1 contact form. And let's go to our browser and navigate to that page. I'll go over here, scroll to the top, and make sure the link is to the HTML project, contact.html. And now we see we have that there. We have this error because we are using that JavaScript file, but we don't have that actual tag or that ID on the page itself. So let's go back to the editor. Scroll to the top. I'm going to take this style out right here, and I'm going to comment that line out right there. Let's save that. Let me clean this up. Okay, so to get started with HTML forms, we're going to first have to create our form element. So we'll do that by typing out the lesser than symbol, form, greater than symbol. This is our opening form tag, and this is our closing form tag. And the content for our form will go inside these tags. Now, the form will typically go to a processing file. So let's say we were using PHP, we can say go to process.php. And that would be the action. So the form would have the tags in here, and then what would actually do the processing would be in a separate file, which you would call process.php. You could also have the code on the same page itself. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this out and leave it blank, just for this demonstration. You would also have a method, and for the most part, I like to use method post. What this allows you to do is make sure the form data is sent to the web server, but is not appended to the URL itself. The other way would be the get parameter, or the get value right here. And what happens here is the form data is going to be appended to the URL when it's submitted, but that's also going to be limited in the amount of content you could have, and it's not really good to use for sensitive data. Now, if it's not going to be sensitive data and you want to be able to bookmark the actual page and form, get would be the way to go. But for the most part, I like using post. This is more secure, it's better for sensitive data, doesn't append it to the URL, and you can send a lot of information this way. Okay, so now, below there, what you would typically have within a contact form are inputs. And you can have a text input, an email input, you could have a URL input, you could have radio buttons, you could have submit buttons, you could have checkboxes, text fields, things of that nature. So I'm going to go step by step and show you how you can use all of these tags in your HTML form. Alright, so first thing I want to do, so I'm going to create the paragraph tags, and I'm doing this just to make everything clean and to look a little bit more separated in the browser itself. And what I'll do is I'll start off with a label, and this is going to be the label for the actual input element. So we could say this one's going to be full name. We have our opening label and our closing label right here. Let's go to a new line. Now I'm going to create the input element itself. Input, and then I'm going to say, let's give it a space. We're going to make this one a type and assign it the value of text. And then I'm going to give it an ID and assign that the value of name. And then we're going to have to give it a name attribute and assign that the value of full name. And then over here, what I'll do is I'll close that off. Now inside the label, we're going to have to go inside the opening label tag and say for name. So now we have our label for name is going to be looking for the input element with the ID of name. We have to have this with the label itself. Now, the name, full name, this is important because you want to make sure that when you submit the actual form, this field is there. If it's not, then that data is not going to be sent. All right, so let's save that and go to the browser and let's see if that took effect. Let's reload our page. We see that error disappeared because we're no longer linking to that JavaScript file. But now we also see that we have right here this input element, form, action, method, post. We have our label and we have the input, text, ID, full name. So that's working. Let me make this part a little bit bigger for now. All right, let's go back to our editor. Another thing we could do here is we could say placeholder and give it the value of full name. So this is another attribute and we're assigning it the value of full name, or you can make it first name, last name, or whatever format you want to have. And then we could also, let's say you want to make this a required field. For that, we can say required. Let's save that. Let's go back to the browser and see how that works. Let's reload the page. And now you see that we have full name in the label, but we also have the placeholder full name inside of the actual input element itself. Okay, let's go back to the editor. So now what I want to do is go to another line here. I'm going to copy this just so I don't have to repeat the whole entire process of typing it out. And this one will say for email. We're going to make an email input field. And then input type, instead of saying text, we're going to say email. And then here we'll just call it email 2. And for the name will be email. And then for the placeholder, we can say enter your email address. We'll save that. So this input field over here and the one above are very similar, except for the fact that the type is going to be email here. The ID is going to be email, which is going to be used for the label itself for email. The name is going to be email, and placeholder, we're going to put the value of enter your email address. And also we're going to make this required as well. Now let's go down to a new line. Let me paste in another input field and label as well. Now I'm going to say label for for telephone. I'll change the text here for telephone. And then here in the type, I'm going to say tel. ID is going to be tel. We'll make the name tel as well. And then I'll say enter your telephone number. And maybe this one you don't want to have it required. All right, so this is another input element, but this time the type is going to be tel for telephone. The ID over here is going to be used by the label here. The name is going to be tel, placeholder, and that's it. Save that and let's go back to the browser and then see how that's working out. Let's reload the page. And now we see we have our full name over here, this input element. We have our email field and our telephone field right here. Okay, let's go back to our editor. Okay, so down here, before I show you some of the other types of elements, I'm going to create a submit element itself. So we're going to put in another input, and this time we're going to say type is going to be for submit, value, submit. So this will create like a submit button when a person is going to submit data to your website. So let's save that and go back to the browser and see what happens. Let's reload the browser and see what happens now. Okay, we have submit. If we try to submit the form without filling out the fields, we're going to get that prompt there. Please fill out this field. And that's because we had the required. So let's say Joel. Now let's put submit. Please fill out this field. Let's say Joel at a fake email address right there. Now let's submit it, and it submitted it. It didn't go anywhere because we didn't include a processing script, but I'm just showing you how this works. Now let's say we put in Joel over here, and let's say here we put in just some numbers and try to submit that. Now, because we're using HTML5 and all websites are using HTML5 for the most part, unless it specifies otherwise, the HTML5 input element of email is going to give you that notice that you have to please include the @ symbol in the email address. So now let's say @j.com. Now for the telephone, let's see what happens if we put letters. It submitted it. But wait, obviously letters aren't a good value, so how can we correct that? Let's go back to our editor and I'll show you how. Okay, so down here in this section, let me close the sidebar real quick. I'll make this just a little bit bigger. Actually, that's too big. What I want to do is put in a pattern. So I'll type out pattern, assign it to value, and this is going to be using a regular expression. So we're going to say, have our opening brace right there. We're going to put 0-9, close that off, put in our curly brace, 3, closing curly brace, and then we'll have a dash, then put in another square bracket, again 0-9, close that off, and then we're going to have another set of 3 numbers, close that curly bracket off, dash, and then we're going to have our opening bracket there, 0-9, close that off, curly brace, and then 4, then close that off. So what we're saying here is the pattern we want to follow is 3 numbers, has to be numbers 0-9. 3 is going to be the amounts for this particular part of the number format, then a dash, and then another 3 numbers 0-9, then a dash, and then 4 numbers 0-9. So instead of enter your number or enter your telephone number for the placeholder, just as a hint for the user, we can say format 800 555 5555. So this is just a format hint, right? There's a bunch of different ways you could do this, but this is just for this demonstration. But basically, I want to make sure that the pattern we're going to be following is going to be like this. All right, so save that. Let's go back to the browser and see what happens. Let's reload our page. So now we see we have that little hint there. So I'll put in my name, email, and now let me try to put in that string right there of letters. And let's submit it. And now we have please match the requested format. And the format here shows how we want it to look. So now let's say we're going to use the 800-555-5555 for the format. Submit, and it works. Let's try this again. It'll work with any number that fits that format. So let's try this one, and that works. All right, so let's go back to our editor and see what else we could do. Okay, so under here, let me make some space. I'm going to copy this right here. I'm going to paste it down here, and this is going to be for username, and I'll just call it uname, and over here as well, and then I'll say the placeholder is going to be username. Okay, so this one, we have our label for uname, username, the closing label tag. We have the input type text, and then the ID is going to be uname. It's going to be associated with the 4 attribute right here, the value, and then name is going to be uname, placeholder, username. Now we'll go down here, space that again, and now we're going to say this is going to be a password. And then we'll say P word there, but for here the type is going to be password. So we're using input type password. I'm just keeping the name or the ID short here. And then I'll say here, enter a password. Okay, so let's save that. All right, so what we're doing here is we have our username field, which is a text field, a type of text. We're making sure that the 4 and the ID matches. The name is uname and the placeholder is username. And then here for this one, the label for P word, password, type is going to be password, and ID, P word, name, P word, placeholder, enter a password. Now the reason why we're doing it like this is because we want the password to be hidden when a person types it out. If we make this a text field, then that'll be visible. And let's go back to the browser after you save this, and let's see how that looks. Let's reload this page. And now you see we have, besides our 3 input fields up here, we now have the username and the password field. So if a person enters a password, they're going to get those dots instead of the actual letters being visible. So that's important. All right, let's go back to the editor and let's see what other type of input fields or fields we could have with our form. I'm going to copy this right here, go down to a new line. Let's say you want to get a person's URL or website address. Well, we can change this over here, say URL. Website, and now for the type it's going to be URL. ID is going to have to match the 4 from the label, so we'll say URL. The name is also going to be URL, or you can call it website. And then here in the placeholder we can say enter your website address. And maybe that's not going to be required because maybe that person doesn't have a website yet or a domain name. So this input field right here of type URL is for website addresses, for URLs. Now let's see what other type of actual form fields or elements we could have. Let's go to a new line. Now to make this go a little bit faster, I'm just going to copy something from my code snippets. Okay, so real quick, let me take this out real quick so I can show you how this looks. All right, so again, we have our label here, and let's say this is like a real estate website. So we're going to say for homes, home type, or choose a home type for the label. The name is going to be homes and the ID is going to be homes. So it's going to match this right here. Now we have our select field right here, our select element, opening and closing select tags, our name and ID there. Make sure it looks like that. But then nested inside of the opening and closing select tag, we have our options here. So we have option value single fam for single family, opening part of the tag with the value, and then the closing part of the option tag. Then we have another option tag, value multifam. I'm actually going to take this out for now. And then we're going to say multifamily, and then the closing option, then option co-op, and then option condo, then the closing select tag there. Let's save this and go back to our browser and see how that looks. Let's reload this page. All right, so now you see we have our website field right here, our input field there. But then we also have to choose a home type, and we have this drop down here. So we have the single family, multifamily, co-op, and condo. We could always inspect these elements and see how they look. See them right there. All right, let's go back to our editor and see what else we could do. Now we can customize the way this looks with either CSS or with some other attributes and values inside the select itself. So I'm going to go that route. I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to say size 2, and that should be size, not scissor. All right, let's save that. Let's go back to our browser and see what happens now. Before we reload, remember, we have it like this. But now if we reload, let's see what happens. Now you see we have 2 options that are visible at first, and you can scroll down. All right, let's go back to the editor and see what else we could do. Basically, a person's going to be selecting one of these options, and just one. But what if you want to allow them to select more than one? What if they're interested in a co-op and a condo? Well, we can go over here in the opening select tag, and we could type out multiple. Let's save that. Go back to the browser. So before we reload, you can only select one. If you try to select more, it's not going to work. But now let's reload. And now let's say a person wants to select both a co-op and a condo. You can do so. All right, let's go back to the editor. Now let's say you want to have a default one selected. I'm just going to take this out real quick just to bring it back to a normal select option. And I'm going to go down here to condo. And I'm going to make that one selected. Save that. Back to the browser. Let's reload the page. And now you see by default, condo is selected. Then we can select something different. Let's see what happens if we reload now. It goes back to condo being selected. Okay, back to the editor. So now let's see what else we can do with input fields or our HTML form. I'm going to grab a code snippet and paste it in here just to speed up the process. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to paste this in. So here we're creating checkboxes. We have our label, input type, checkbox, name, color 1, value, red, and then the closing part of the label. Now this one you see we did a little bit different, right? Instead of having the label on one side, then the input fields on another line, we embedded the input field inside of the label. This is another way to do that. And by doing it this way, you don't have to use the for attribute like you do up here. Let me clean this up a little bit. Okay, so this is going to be for a checkbox. We have our type checkbox, name, the name we're going to give it, then the values. Then inside of the checkbox input field, we have red, white, and blue. Then we have our closing labels. Save that. Let's go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload this page. And now you see we have our 3 checkboxes right here, red, white, and blue. All right, back to the editor. Now let's say you want to have radio buttons. Let's copy this. Bring it down here. And then for the input type, we're going to say radio. And actually for the checkboxes, we could just leave it as color for the name. That'll be fine. So over here, we'll just say color 2, like that. All right, so we're doing something similar here that we did over here. But instead of having checkboxes, we're going to have a radio option here. All right, so let's go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload the browser. And now you see we have radio buttons here. And we also have the checkboxes. All right, back to the editor. Okay, so let's now say you want to have somebody leave you a message. Let me bring in a code snippet over here. Okay, so here we have our label, for message, label. Then we're creating a text area with our lesser than symbol text area. ID is going to be message, and that's going to match the 4. And then name is going to be message. And then this one we're saying rows 10 and columns 20. And what this does, it tells it how many rows should be displayed in the browser and how many columns. Then we're just closing off the text area tag right there. Let's save that. Let's go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload. And now we see we have this text area over here. If we go down here, and let's say we want to change this around, make that value 50. So you saw how that made that bigger, right? We can go here, instead of 10 rows, make that 30 rows. And now you saw it made it have more rows over here. And if you have none of these, take that one out and take this one out. Now we have a regular text area, and it can be expanded with this handle right here. All right, let's go back to the editor. And now I'm going to show you some other input fields and elements you could use with your contact forms. Now, not all of these are going to work with different web browsers. Most of them will, but some might not. And you could use a website can I use in order to determine which ones are going to work or not. But I'll show you what these input fields are. I'm going to take some code snippets and paste them in here. This first one here is going to be for a color selector. So label for color, select your favorite color, closing part of the label tag. Then the input field here, it's going to be type color, name color, ID is going to be color, and it has to match the 4 color here. Let's save that. Let's go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload. And now you see we have over here, select your favorite color. And if you click on it, you get a color picker. So that's pretty cool. Now, let me show you that website, the Can I Use website. This is a good website for you to bookmark. It's going to show you what elements you can use and what you cannot use. If you go over here to compare browsers, you get a list of options. So let's say we just want to focus on HTML5. And then if you want to compare the different browsers, you could do that. So let's go with the more recent version of Chrome versus Firefox, and then Safari and Opera, and then Edge as well. Okay, so now if you go down here, you're going to see supported, no prefixes needed, and then you're going to see what has at least partial support. The HTML5 form features. Edge has support for all of them. Firefox has partial. Chrome has all of them. Safari is partial, and Opera has all of them. And then you have the mixed support over here. So if we go over here to HTML5 form features, let's see what happens when we click that. So it shows you what it currently has, what support it has. All right, so let's go back over here and let's go back to our editor. I'm going to paste in another code snippet over here, and this is going to be for a birthday. And a matter of fact, let me cut these out here and put it above the text area because we want the message to be at the bottom. All right, so this is going to be for, let's say, somebody inputting their birthday. So we say label for birthday, birthday, label, input type date. We're using the date type over here. Name is going to be birthday, and ID is going to be birthday. Save that, and let's go back to the browser and see what happens. Let's reload, and now you see we have this birthday field here. If a person clicks on the inside of it or clicks over here on the drop down, you get a calendar. So that's cool. Or you can use this right here, the up and down arrows, in order to change the fields or the options. All right, let's go back to the editor. Okay, so now let's see another option we have. We're going to use an input type of week, and the label is there, similar format. Let's save that, go back to the browser. Let's reload. And now we have that here. Again, a person could just fill it out in that manner, or they can click the drop down, or they can just use the up and down arrows. Okay, let's go back to the editor. I'm going to go over here, paste this snippet in there, and this is for an input type of month. Save that. Make sure your code looks like that. Let's go back to the browser. Let's reload, and now you see we have that there. And that works. If it's not working in your browser, it's because it might not have support for it. Any of these input fields that are HTML5 based, not all of them are going to be supported by all browsers. I'm using Chrome, and Chrome has support for the widest set of input fields. If you're using a different browser, you might have different results. All right, let's go back to the editor. So I'll go over here to a new line. And now we're going to say this is going to be for choosing a time. Let's say somebody wants to set up an appointment with you, and you want to give them the ability to choose a time. That's what this could be for. We have the input type of time, name time, ID time. We have the label up here. Make sure your code looks like that. Save it and go back to the browser. Let's reload. And now we have the choose a time, and they could choose a time based on that manner. All right, let's go back to the editor. Okay, so I'm going to paste in another code snippet here, and this is going to be for local time. Let's say you're a large company or a national franchise, or you have offices in different places, and a person can make an appointment in their location. So you want to make sure they can use the local time. That's where this can come in handy. Now, this is not supported in all browsers, but let's see how this works. We have the label for local time, input type date time dash local, then the name local time and ID local time. Let's save that and go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload. And now we have local time. Here we have the month, date, and year. And then we can work with the time here, just like that. All right, let's go back to the editor. I'm going to go to a new line over here, paste in another code snippet. And now let's say you have something you're selling on your website. Let's say you have like t-shirts or hats or mugs or something you want to sell in a variety of quantities. So here we're going to be using a label for total. How many would you like? And then closing off the label tag. Then we're going to have an input type number. Now, this is going to give you a number option. And this could be used for something other than like products. It could be something different that would just require a number field. So then we're going to say name is going to be total. ID is going to be total. And then here we're giving it a min and a max range. Now, you don't have to do this. You can leave this out. And let me cut that out for now. We can leave it like that, save it. Let's go to the browser and see how that looks for now. Let's reload the browser. And now we see here, we have the how many would you like? And you have this thing you could toggle for the quantity. And if you try to put, let's say, letters in here, it's not going to work because it's a number field. All right, let's go back to the editor. Actually, before we do that, you can see you can go beyond 10, right? Or you can go less than 0. So now let's go back to the editor and let me show you what you could do. Let me undo the removal of the min and the max values and attributes. All right, let's save that. Basically, I'm saying a minimum of 1 because a person shouldn't be able to order less than 1, right? And let's say you don't want to sell more than 10 of an item. Let's say it's a limited production and you don't want somebody buying your whole entire inventory for that product. Save that. Let's go back to the browser and see how that change looks. Let's reload. Now let's go over here. See, you cannot go below 1. And you cannot go above 10. So that works. Okay, let's go back to the editor. I'm going to go here, paste in another code snippet. And now let's say you want to give a person a range. So we're going to say label for range, closing off the label there. This is going to be an input type of range, name range. The ID is matching range here. And we're doing the same thing. We're giving a minimum and a maximum. Let's save that. Go back to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload. And now you see you have a range here. Okay, let's go back to the editor. Okay, I'm going to go over here, paste in another code snippet. Now let's say you want somebody to be able to upload a file to your server. This is the type of input field you would use. So let me put the 4 here. And I'll put the ID here. Okay, so we have the input type file, name file, ID file. Save that. Let's go to the browser and see how that looks and works. Let's reload this page. And now you have the choose a file to upload. If you click on this, let's see what happens. As you can see, you get the ability to choose a file from your actual hard drive, and it's shown right there. Now again, we're not processing the data in this video. That's going to be when I go over dynamic server-side programming in either PHP or Python. But this shows you how to get the HTML part of it to work. All right, let's go back to the editor. Let me go to a new line. Let's say you want to have a search box on your website. That's how you could do it with this input type. Input type search, name search, ID search. And this is the label for that. Let me get a couple more code snippets real quick. This one is for a button, which is going to be a type submit, send your message. Similar to this one here for the input, you would only choose one, but this is just another way to get that done. And now this one here is for a reset. Let's say a person fills out your form. It's a lot of information. They don't want to delete everything that's there now. They could just click the reset button and it'll reset all the fields within your form. Make sure to save this. Let's go back to the browser and see how the search field looks and how the button and reset field looks as well. Let's reload. All right, so now this is the search field right here. And this is the button to send your message. And this is the reset right here. So let's say you fill something out here. We fill something out here. And now you want to reset everything. That's how you do that. Very simple. All right, let's go back to the editor and let me show you another thing you could do. Now this one's going to be for an address. And this is going to be a long snippet. So let me get that code snippet and I'll paste it in here. Okay, let me scroll up a bit. Now, when we're grouping content together, we can use the field set here. This is the field set tag, opening and closing field set. Inside of it, we have a legend, which we're giving it the value of address or the name address. Then we're putting in a div here, label for street, number and street, input ID street, name street, type text. And then we have another div over here with the label for city, input ID city, name city, type text. And then over here, we have the label for state. We have our select tag right here with the ID of state, name state. And here in the options, we have all the options of all the states in the United States. Closing select tag, closing div tag for that section. And then we have for the zip code. And then here we have input ID zip. Pattern is going to be using a 5-digit pattern for a zip code, and type text. Then our closing div for that one, then the closing part of the field set. So if you have to pause the video for a moment, do so and make sure your code looks like this. This is all the options you have. Okay, let's save that, go to the browser and see how that looks. Let's reload. And now you see we have the field set in this manner. We have the number and street, we have the city, we have the options for the states, and we have the option for the zip code. Okay, let's go back to the editor. Let's go back to the top. All right, just as a recap, we have the opening form tag here with an action. Right now it's empty, but you can have it go to a process.php file, or you can go to the server itself, or you can go to another page or document that'll process the actual form fields and data. We have the method. Right now we're using post. The other option you could use is get. Again, post is what I like to use. It's more secure, better to handle sensitive data. You would use the get option for non-sensitive data, and if you want to be able to bookmark the form. Here we have our label, and then we have our input types. This one's a type of text. We have the ID that has to match the 4 in the label, name and name. Then we have the name. Then we have placeholder and required. You could also do something else, like if you want to have something auto-focused, you can have that done here. So I'm just going to say auto focus. Let's save that. Let's go back to the browser real quick. Make sure to go to the top. Let's reload the page. And now you see that automatically the email field is focused on. That's what autofocus does. All right, let's go back to the editor. Then we have the input type tel for a telephone number, and we're using a pattern here. This is a regular expression looking for 3 digits dash 3 digits dash 4 digits. This is for the username, just a regular text input. This one for the password, using a password type. This is URL, an input type URL. Here we're using the select tag with the options. And in this one we have the checkboxes. This one has the radio fields. This one's for color, which gives you a color picker. This one's for birthday, gives you a calendar using the date. This is for week, for month, type, time, date, time, local. This is a regular number for like a quantity. We're using the min and max here. This is for a range. Again, min and max. This is to let people upload a file, input type file. This is for a search field. This is for a text area and a message. This is for an address. Remember, we're using the field set, legend. Then we have the input type text. For the street, same thing for the city. And for the state, we're using the select with all the initials and the names of the states right here. Then we have for the zip code, the pattern for the zip code itself, closing field set right there. Then we have the button submit, and input type reset. These are different things right here. Let's go back to the browser. Now, this may not be the most beautiful looking form. We didn't apply any styles to this. That's going to be in my CSS playlist on how to use CSS to add style to your HTML documents and your website. But this is the HTML that you'll need in order to create a form. As we progress through the series, and through the upcoming series, I'll show you more on how you can use validation with JavaScript, jQuery, how you can use server-side validation and sanitization. That's going to be important for when you process your data from a contact form, and especially when you're going to enter it into a database. So definitely make sure you join the community by subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification icon so whenever I create new videos, you'll be notified. My goal is to help you become a full stack web developer, learning the front end with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery. Gonna learn how to use the server side as well with PHP and Python, MySQL. I'm gonna show you how to work with Linux, everything you need to be a full stack developer. Again, you can also get code snippets on my website, PixemWeb.com. I'm adding more tutorials to this website as well, so make it easy for you to copy and paste to your clipboard and work with it within your media editor. Okay, so hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification icon. If you have a comment or question, leave it down below, and I will see you in the next video. Happy coding.